BJP General Secretary Amit Shah has less than 24 hours to respond to the Election Commission's notice threatening action if he can't satisfactorily explain his allegedly incendiary speeches in Western UP. So tonight we ask, can he justify what he said and dispel concerns, or is he guilty of incitement as his adversaries claim? My guests are BJP Gujarat spokesman and former Minister Jainaran Vyas, Congress spokesperson Abhishek Singhvi, the chairman of the Hindu group NRAM, and a leading businessman and supporter of Narendra Modi, Zafar Sareshwala. Mr. Jainaran Vyas, let me quote to you what Amit Shah said in Shamli on the 3rd of April. उत्तर प्रदेश में और विशेष करके पश्चिमी उत्तर प्रदेश में ये चुनाव सम्मान का चुनाव है, अपमान के बदले का चुनाव है और जिन्होंने अन्याय किया है उनको सबक सिखाने का चुनाव है. That sounds like a blatant attempt to divide communities and create enmity between them whilst hoping to benefit and gain political advantage from the outcome. How do you justify that statement?
Well, I think Karan will have to understand a little bit about the background of Amit Shah's entry and the kind of misinformation and maligning campaign that has been let loose on him. The day Amit Shah was assigned Uttar Pradesh, this was precisely the allegation made on him. Somebody said that he is there to polarize. Somebody said
Can I interrupt, Mr. Vyas? Let's not go to the background. What I'm quoting was on television. There's no doubt that he said it. I'm asking you, how do you justify? Surely no background can be justification for incitement.
Karan, always one has to read it in reference to the context. You know, if you say that, you know, at the time of election, you know, when this statement is being made, these words are being uttered at the time of the election campaign, and when you are talking to an election campaign rally, you are talking about using your rights, and that right is through the ballot box. That is absolutely clear and obvious.
All right.
So I don't think there is any room for interpreting it otherwise.
Let me bring in Abhishek Singhvi. Abhishek Singhvi, your party, the Congress party, is one of two parties that has complained to the Election Commission. How do you respond to the explanation or justification you've just heard from Jainaran Vyas, that in the context of an election campaign, this is simply an assertion of rights, not incitement? Abhishek Singhvi
is slightly more audible. Yes, your audio is slightly better. The rest of the audio is horrible. I can hardly hear, but let me say from a general feel or sense. First of all, this kind of hair splitting, this kind of sterile semantics is intended to confound and confuse. Mr. Amit Shah, by his symbolism, by his statements, by his actions, by the manner of his imagery for the last 6 months, in all over UP, is running a communal campaign. It is a criminal offence, not merely an EC notice. An EC notice is important, but it's a criminal offence under 153A, the same provision under which Mr. Advani and the whole horde of people who saw Babri demolition were booked.
Okay.
It is something which is directly contrary to every model code of conduct. It incites and provokes, and it is not this alone. He is doing it. The NDTV has carried a program showing VHP and RSS cadres openly asking for vote on religious rights.
Let's stick to Amit Shah. Let's not expand the subject to bring in VHP and RSS cadres, because then we'll become very diffuse. NRAM, Ravi Shankar Prasad says that elections are an opportunity for people to vent their grievances, and that what Amit Shah meant when he talked of badla or revenge was nothing more than this is an opportunity to vent your grievance. Would you accept that? Mr. Ram, can you hear me? No, I don't think Mr. Ram can hear me at all.
No audio. Mr. Ram.
I apologize, Mr. Ram. We seem to be having a problem with Chennai tonight. This is unfortunately the second time it's happening this evening. Mr. Sareshwala, let me quote to you another one of Amit Shah's outbursts. This time in Bijnor on the 4th, according to the Times of India, he said, Mayawati, to appease a community that oppresses you and rapes your women, you gave its members 19 poll tickets. You tell me, he asks her, can we raise our honor by mingling with a community that kills our men and our youth? Now, if that sort of statement would incur police action in normal times, how can it be acceptable in the middle of an election?
Yeah, Karan. The kind of narrative which we have been seeing, and of course about Amit Shah and several others. But I think these politicians don't know that these kind of rhetoric will not work at all. I mean, as you were mentioning about the communal divide, I've been traveling across the country, even in UP. I've been to Muzaffarnagar.
Can I stop you there? You said something very interesting. These sort of politicians will not know that this sort of rhetoric will not work. Are you therefore admonishing Amit Shah for using this sort of rhetoric and for hoping that it will produce results?
No, of course, not only Amit Shah, but all of them. I mean, it's not only Amit Shah. You have range of politicians talking absurd. They don't know their ground reality.
So just a moment. Let's stick. Mr. Sureshwala, let's stick to Amit Shah. Let's stick to Amit Shah because he's the subject. Let's not make it diffuse by bringing in others. You are therefore telling me that you disagree with this call for badla and revenge. You think it's wrong, it's a mistake, and it amounts to incitement. Have I understood you correctly?
No, I'm saying that any kind of incitement these politicians should understand will not work. Any kind of divide based on religion will not work because it doesn't exist. The only divide which we have in our country, or the polarization which we have, is between the haves and the have-nots.
If it doesn't exist, Amit Shah was certainly trying to create it.
Uneducated.
Unfortunately, if it doesn't exist, Amit Shah was trying to create it with this statement. That's the danger. Let me bring in Jayanara and Vyas, and hopefully while I'm talking to Mr. Vyas, that line to Chennai will have improved and I can go back to my two guests in our studio in Chennai. Jayanara and Vyas, unfortunately, there are multiple examples of Amit Shah's incendiary speech. Again, on the 4th of April in Muzaffarnagar, he said, "You've been treated as second-class citizens. If you set aside self-respect and practice casteism, I can't say anything." But then he adds, "Remember, one who cannot guard his honor is useless." Once again, he's provoking people to take action against the Muslim community, and then he's suggesting that if they don't, they will not deserve respect. And I put it to you, that is blatant incitement. How do you defend it?
Well, Karan, I think I'll first deal with what my friend Abhishek said. He was talking about 153A and this being a criminal offense. I think before we go to that step, one will have to clearly establish the mens rea. And no way you will be able to establish the mens rea because the reference to context in which these utterances are made.
Mr. Vyas, establishing mens rea only becomes important when the matter goes to court. The grounds for arrest is what in fact Mr. Singhvi was talking about. Mr. Singhvi and Mr. Ram are back with me. I'll go to them in a moment's time. But now answer my question. I put to you yet another quotation from Amit Shah, where he is clearly trying to provoke people to take action against the Muslims, and he's clearly suggesting that if they don't, they won't deserve respect. And I put it to you, that is incitement. How do you defend it? Give me an answer specifically to that.
Karan, several times government of Gujarat has been meted out this treatment. No time we have said this, that this is something which is an inciting statement by anybody. You know, when at the time of election you are talking,
forgive me, I'm not sure I understand your answer. Are you saying that Amit Shah is somehow retaliating on the grounds that the government of Gujarat was similarly attacked? I mean, that doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
No, Karan. In case of no, not the list. In case, see, I am trying to say how common it is. Just because it is something which is uttered by Amit Shah, it should not be magnified and blown out of proportion.
But now this is very interesting. Just a moment. When you say forgive me, I'm interrupting you. When you say don't magnify out of proportion something Amit Shah has uttered, you are ipso facto conceding that what he's uttered was wrong and shouldn't have been uttered. That is a clear consequence of what you said.
I don't submit. I don't agree, Karan.
Okay.
I am trying to say once again, I was completing my statement that I will stick to my argument.
All right.
That reference to context in which it was spoken, you have to guard your honor, you have to,
All right,
you
Mr.
have to
Vyas,
fight
I'm
for
going to
your
stop
rights.
you there.
That is
I've
with
got
the government.
Abhishek Singhvi with me. While that line to Chennai is with us, I want to take both him and Mr. Ram. First, Abhishek Singhvi, you wanted to make a point. You were raising your hand. Go right ahead.
Very quickly, Karan, on this reference to context phrase in mens rea, first of all, Mr. Amit Shah was not there for a tea party. He was out seeking votes. The mens rea is clear, to divide and seek votes. Second, the incitement is made out because what he is saying is clear. A Hindu community, specifically a Jat community, has been insulted by a certain minority community, revenge from them. It's community versus A versus B community. It's an appeal to votes on the grounds of religion. It is incitement and provocation.
All right.
Even a first-year law student will tell you that. But the real important point is, Mr. Shah is already somebody who is known for his communal past in Gujarat. He is under severe criminal cases, out on bail, and he's doing it again for the last 3 or 4 months, along with RSS and VHP Pracharaks.
Forgive me, are those therefore grounds for his bail to be removed, for it to be taken back by the court, revoked? Abhishek Singhvi, are those grounds
Sorry,
for his bail to be revoked?
No, I would not say that because the bail is in a different offence.
All right. Let me bring
Therefore,
in
you
Enram.
can revoke it only for actions in that offence.
All right, I understand. Enram, I want to put two questions to you while that line to Chennai stays with us. First of all, Ravi Shankar Prasad has claimed that because President Obama in one of his campaign speeches in America said that voting was the best revenge, it's perfectly understandable and acceptable for Amit Shah to make the same point. Has Obama, in your eyes, set a precedent that somehow exonerates Amit Shah?
Absolutely not. It is an absurd caricature in the name of a comparison, because Obama is not a communalist, he is not a racist. Whatever weaknesses he has, that you can't accuse him of that. And he's talking in a context where people have been oppressed. The black community has been oppressed in the United States, and now it's in a different context. So to compare that, just taking the words out of context, and defending this outrageous, this atrocious, these assertions in a context of communalization. My friend, Mr. Singhvi, senior counsel, has spoken on the law. He made it very clear what the offences are. But the politics of it is equally deplorable. And it's disgraceful that the BJP, which says that it's going for development and is not focusing on the Hindutva issues, although the manifesto has that, is now using him in a key capacity in Uttar Pradesh as a main campaign manager, a man who's accused in a murder case, who was implicated in that surveillance case where the young woman was done, and he's now allowed to run riot with his communal messages. It's outrageous.
Let me go back to...
and a blot on the BJP's campaign in this general election.
Let me quickly go back to Jai Narayan Vyas before I bring in Zafar Sareshwala. Mr. Vyas, you were arguing a moment ago that the comment made by Amit Shah must be seen against a background and must be seen in a particular context. Let me put that context to you. When Amit Shah became the head of the BJP campaign in Uttar Pradesh, the first thing he said on his first few visits was that he committed the BJP to the making of a Ram Mandir. Then shortly thereafter, when Muzaffarnagar riots happened, BJP garlanded the rioters in public. 3 of those rioters have now become official BJP candidates. And finally, Mr. Modi has decided to stand from Varanasi to clothe himself in the colors of Hindutva. Seen against that context and background, I put it to you, far from making Mr. Amit Shah's rhetoric understandable, it becomes much more dangerous and threatening. The context makes it worse, not better.
Karan, if you say that Amit Shah had done wrong and he was responsible for creating a rhetoric when he said we are committed to the Ram Mandir, I think you should refer to our manifesto which has been recently declared. You know, that's the one of the commitments that the BJP has. Question is that either through the amendment in the law or constitutional methods, either through a common settlement or through the court of law, whichever way it is coming, but we will continuously and ceaselessly try for that. That's the commitment as far as Bharatiya Janata Party is concerned. The problem with these people is, Karan, that they are suffering from Gerard Ford mentality that any color is good, so far so it is black. You paint Amit Shah in a particular color, you label him in a particular manner, and then anything that has been said by him, you interpret it in your own manner, and you don't even recognize that the apex court of the country has bailed him out.
Just a moment, Mr. Vyas.
The offence was bailable.
Just a moment. You're accusing N. Ram and Abhishek Singhvi of painting Amit Shah in black colors. Let me put that issue first to Mr. Zafar Sareshwala, who's not only a publicly admitted supporter of Mr. Modi, but an admirer of Mr. Modi as well. Are people wrong, Mr. Sareshwala, to criticize Amit Shah, or has Amit Shah earned and richly deserved the criticism he's getting? Answer that specifically.
No, absolutely. You know, whoever it is, if somebody utters these kind of words, of course it has to be admonished.
Thank you.
And you see the conduct of Mr. Modi compared to that. Since last 9-10 months, that is the reason why a lot of Muslim community and particularly the Muslim youth have been moving towards Modi.
Let me stop you there. It's very interesting that you should say, it's very interesting you should say, look at the conduct of Mr. Modi, because yesterday at the press conference to launch the BJP manifesto, this was a question put to Mr. Modi and he refused to answer it. Do you think Amit Shah has embarrassed Mr. Modi, which is why Mr. Modi maintained silence? Answer that, Mr. Zafar Sareshwala.
I don't know about that, but at least I have been observing, and a lot of people are observing what Mr. Modi has been speaking for the past 11 months, and also his conduct in last 11 years. So I think we would judge Mr. Modi by what he's been doing in the 11 years and what he's been talking in last 11-12 months. So I don't think this was unnecessary for Mr. Amit Shah to have spoken whatever he has said.
I'm going to, for the sake of the audience, underline. He should be admonished, you said. This was unnecessary, you said. This is wrong and it shouldn't have been spoken. Those are three very important points from a man who's an acknowledged admirer of Narendra Modi. And Ram, the paradox is that Amit Shah's incitement of Jats and his attempt to turn them against Muslims happened roughly at the same time as the BJP manifesto, which says, and I'm quoting, it's unfortunate that a large section of the minorities, and especially the Muslim community, continues to be stymied in poverty. A very understanding sentence and sentiment about the plight of the Muslim community. And the same manifesto talks about the need to preserve the rich culture and heritage of the minority communities. It even calls unity in diversity the hallmark of India. When you compare the manifesto sentiments alongside Mr. Amit Shah's hate speech, do you think that there's an element of schizophrenia that runs through part of the BJP?
There's an element of schizophrenia in the manifesto itself, Karan, as we discussed, and you were pointing it out to me yesterday, this phrase, unity in diversity. By the way, it is lifted from the 2009 manifesto authored by Mr. Advani, a typical Nehruvian phrase. But that's true. They pay homage to the culture of the minority communities. That's we welcome. But there's a schizoid character to it, because the Ram Janmabhoomi abrogation of Article 370, the Uniform Civil Code, all that comes in with some softening of the language and some new,
Let me bring in at that point Abhishek Singhvi. Abhishek Singhvi, you're a lawyer. You're a man who's dealt with the Election Commission on many occasions. You understand how they function and what sort of reasoning goes into the decisions they come up with. What do you expect them to do? Will they simply admonish Mr. Amit Shah? Or is there a possibility that they could find a way of perhaps banning him from campaigning in UP?
Well, that's really up to the Election Commission to answer. The answer to your question from me is the power is there. A person can be stopped from campaigning, a person can be stopped from participating in election, and more importantly, if the SP government in UP acts, perhaps he can be arrested as well. It's a different issue that politically some may try to get sympathy, air of a martyr. Those are different issues. Two quick points, Karan, very quickly. Mr. Vyas talked about our commitment. He used the word commitment 4 times. There are some things in the manifesto which are specifically said intended not to be obeyed and stated officially not to be obeyed. In 1999, when they had their manifesto, the same 3 things were there. One day after the government was formed, they spoke officially and said, these 3 things are a BJP promise in the manifesto. We are an NDA government. We can't do it. That's hypocrisy. It is not commitment.
But
And just half a second is very important.
Very quickly.
Crocodile tears for minorities. A striking example. Government of India pays under Sachar Committee reform for scholarships to students of minorities. Government of Gujarat opposes, goes to Gujarat High Court, loses, goes to Supreme Court, loses.
Let me go back very quickly to Jainara and Vyas. Mr. Vyas, you've just heard Abhishek Singhvi say before that line went down that the Election Commission has the power to ban Mr. Amit Shah from campaigning in UP. Secondly, given that in fact the UP police stepped in when Imran Masood threatened to chop up Narendra Modi and immediately arrested him, and he stayed in jail till he was let out on bail, are you worried of two things? One, that the Election Commission may ban Amit Shah from campaigning in UP, and two, the UP police, although admittedly belatedly, may step in and seek to arrest Amit Shah just as they arrested Imran Masood. Answer that.
Well, Karan, Abhishek gave a very good clinical treatment to what are the provisions of law. The fact that this is not being acted upon so far is enough evidence that there is no such grave violation of any kind. The words spoken were in a different context, and I stand by it that I think just because it was
what about the possibility, I'm interrupting you because time is our enemy, what about the possibility that the Election Commission may ban Amit Shah from campaigning in UP? They have the power to do so. What if they exercise it?
Well, Election Commission in its own right and in its own wisdom, if they think it that this is the possible action that may be taken, I am sure we will also have the right to defend ourselves.
But are you saying, very quickly, I'm interrupting you. You're suggesting by that answer that if the Election Commission bans Amit Shah, you will accept it. Have I understood you correctly?
Well, ultimately, Election Commission is a constitutional authority. But then, against their decisions also, there is a recourse, there is a redressal of the grievance available. So, appropriate action will be taken. Why do we fight on hypothetical
You began
issues?
by suggesting you'd accept it. You ended up somewhere rather differently diffusing your answer. Very quickly, Enram. Let me go to Enram while I have that line to Chennai. We've had terrible problems with Chennai right through this evening. Mr. Ram, the UP police acted swiftly when Imran Masood, the Congress candidate in Saharanpur, said that Narendra Modi could be chopped up into pieces. He was immediately arrested and he stayed in jail till he was released on bail. When it comes to the incitement by Mr. Amit Shah, the UP police so far has not acted at all. In your eyes, is that double standards? Or do you think they're being wise in being cautious because the backlash that might emerge from Amit Shah's arrest might actually create a much bigger problem than not arresting him in the first place? A quick answer.
Yes, good question, Karan. I think it's the latter, that it's better to be cautious and then proceed soundly in accordance with law. And Mr. Singhvi has made it clear that this is prosecutable, 153A of the Indian Penal Code. And so let them do their investigation and go ahead and act in accordance with law. But I think to be cautious and not to be ham-handed, I think, is a wise thing to do.
Very quickly, Mr. Singhvi, this must be the last question on this particular episode. The police in UP have not so far acted. Is there a possibility that some member of the Congress party might step in and demand action by the police? At the moment, you've only gone to the Election Commission, but might you step in and demand action by the police?
Karan, it's completely unnecessary to demand action by a police after a FIR stands registered, in this case by no less than a EC. After an FIR registered, it is obligatory on the police forces to investigate the alleged crime and then take action.
In which case, what do you make of the
required by me or you?
In which case, a very quick interruption. What do you make of the fact that the police have not arrested Amit Shah? They were very quick to arrest Imran Masood, but they haven't arrested Amit Shah.
Well, clearly a frank, candid answer to your question is there is clearly a discriminatory action Masood and Amit Shah. Clearly he was arrestable. It's a different matter. I can understand that certainly politically we don't want to make a hero or give him a halo out of a martyr's edge.
Very
but that
quick-
cannot be stretched beyond a point.
All right.
If he's doing this kind of thing, he deserves to be arrested.
Very quickly, there's a smile on Jainaran Vyas's face. Why are you smiling, Mr. Vyas? Do you feel pleased with the way Amit Shah has behaved and the way he's portrayed your party? Are you proud of it?
Karan, I was smiling because I for one would say that either there is no reason detre, or my friend Abhishek is trying to say that UP police has gone too political and they have started considering every action on the political grounds. I don't think any of these things exist.
Let's leave this particular episode there. Let's leave it on a point when you're smiling, even if it's an inscrutable smile and none of us can work out quite what there is to smile about. My thanks to all four of my guests and my apologies to both Abhishek Singhvi and N. Ram for that dreadful line from Chennai, and my earlier apologies to Mr. Krishnamurthy, who suffered the same problem as well. Hopefully we'll have put that right, and when we go back to Chennai next, we'll have no problem at all. Goodbye. Good night.